How's it going, everybody? It's the CDH Warrior coming at you with the next episode in our relationships series of CDH. We survived this. Now what? So, let's roll the title. So this week's episode it falls into a very tricky situation. A very tricky question to answer. As you all saw by the title, the question for today is this. When do you tell a spouse that you have CDH? Spouse, relationship partner, dating, boyfriend, girlfriend. I'm not going to discriminate here. I'm just posing a question. So I started thinking about this question last Thursday when I posted the video about relationships and overview. And kind of started explaining everything that we'll get into in this series. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the first video in this series. But for this week, the reason why I posed this question is because it seems to be an unusual question. And there will be a follow-up. This is part 1 of this question. There will be a part 2 to this question, and it'll kind of be your all's answers to the question. So, the question I'm posing is simply this. When did you tell your spouse about having the fact that you have CDH? I mean, let's be honest. As we get further into this series, they're gonna know. They're gonna find out. So, the reason why I pose this question is, when do you tell them? Do you tell them, try and lay it all out at the beginning? That's what I kind of do, but I've seen that backfire on me more times than I care to explain. And I'll kind of be honest, I'm going to tie this back to a video as well that I did about CDH in high school and growing up with CDH. I'll be honest, I was somewhat self-conscious of it back in high school because of ironically, a relationship-like question. I got asked about my scars. And to be honest, it's by somebody that was enough younger than me that I didn't see them as somebody I would try and date. But the question perturbed me a bit because I didn't know how to answer it. The question that was posed to me was about my scars. What was it from? That was around the time I became self-conscious. I'm not going to drone on too much about that. You all have the other video to understand the answer to that question. But, yeah, quite simply, the question this week is, when do you tell a romantic partner you've been through CDH? You know, I've pretty much put it out there. But just so everyone knows, this is what I look like. I've got scars. I've got pectus excavatum. I've got a major scar that runs across my side. there's no hiding that. There is no easy way to hide something like that. So, from my perspective, it's kind of easier to go ahead, get it out of the way. Go ahead and tell. Go ahead and tell what happened. Because the worst they can say is, I guess they could dump you for it, but that'd be kind of shallow. But unfortunately, that's probably an accurate description of what could happen. But honestly, it's better to find out something like that at the beginning than towards the end of, or towards the middle of the relationship. But that's kind of the reason why I'm posing this question. And it's one I want feedback from some of the people in the group, some of the other adults with CDH. If you see this video, either comment on it or comment when you see it in the group. I work for a nonprofit and we have a private group that we discuss all things with CDH. Any questions that get asked are going to be answered. But that's not necessarily the point of this video. Granted, this is kind of a part 1 of this. This is kind of part 2, section 1. But there will be a follow-up video next week for this that will explain the question that's posed and kind of give some other answers, give some other opinions. I know you all are kind of slowly getting tired of hearing me drone on about this. But and this doesn't necessarily specifically just have to do with CDH. I do this as CDH, we survived this, now what? But only because that's what I understand. You can pretty much relate this to any rare disorder that exists. Somebody is going to ask questions. When you get into a relationship, there are going to be questions that are asked, that are posed about what you've been through. Now, it'll be later in the relationship, but there's also the question, do you want it found out later in the relationship? Do you want to go ahead and put it on the table now? So that adds a layer to dealing with this. The reason why this will be 2 parts for this question is because I want feedback on it. That's the only reason why there's 2 parts. I know the following week, after the second part of this is recorded, I'll probably do a discussion about intimacy. And then we'll get into the odd question of what happens if you decide to have kids? That's such a bizarre question, that sounds like such a bizarre discussion of, well, that seems kind of normal. But it's an honest question that needs to be posed. It's an honest question of things that need to be thought about. But anyway, back to the main subject. My personal opinion on dealing with things like this, and in general, that's probably why I haven't had much I haven't had much success with relationships. Sorry, I tried to trip over my words. It's late. I'm doing this at 10 o'clock at night. 11 o'clock at night. I stand corrected. But that's where this relationship series is going to start taking off. Is we're going to ask the hard questions. Ask the honest things that people aren't going to normally think about. I remember when I was in high school, even in college, I always had this fear about relationships and, what if? How do I explain this? Because it's not easy to just say it outright. And that's the most straightforward approach, but that's the easiest way, also the easiest way to scare the crap out of someone. Excuse my language, but I'm being realistic here. So I don't normally do a video like this, so I'm having to think about how to fill up the rest of the time. I guess I'll kind of explain my past experience with relationships because they've been kind of funny. I've never gotten far enough in a relationship except for one, and they're now married. But with one exception, I've never really gotten too far in a relationship. And I was extremely young. I was a teenager. I was a young teenager as well, at that. But that's where not having a whole lot of experience dating, not having a whole lot of, I'm not going to say not having an understanding of relationships, because it's not completely accurate. Just having been out of practice for so long, it can be hard. It can be hard to explain. Oh, I've been through this. And then kind of your immediate reaction is, great, I scared them. What now? But I think it says something when you have people that will stick by you and stay with you in a relationship, even after knowing you've been through something like that. And it's not that having a relationship, being in a relationship is easy, or for that matter, being single is easy. Trust me, there's jealousy. And it's not really intended that way. But there's definitely jealousy when, especially when you get to my age, when you're watching friends that you grew up with, even friends that you have now, that they're in stable relationships. And you kind of just get left off to the side. I think I've kind of lost the point in this. But I think you all got the gist of the explanation. So, for the CDH Warrior, I'm Drew Monday, and I will see you next week with another episode of CDH. We survived this. Now what? Have a great day. And we will have a much better episode next week.